and Countable, the book. Hey, I have an amazingly fun event planned for us today. I was reading an Inc. article about leadership, and I noticed there was a lot more about discipline in the article than I thought. And I approached my friend Remy and Julian, who runs Zella Life and founded the company and are just doing amazing in coaching companies around diversity issues and just management issues and leadership issues. There's a lot that's come out around that, but I'd love to introduce you to Remy Meraz. She's CEO of Zella Life. I've known Remy for several years now. Julie and I are new friends, and Julian's the COO of the company. Welcome, guys.
Thank you so much for having us, Jeff. We're really excited to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Absolutely. Hey, can you just give everyone for a second what Zella Life is, Remy, so that way we're all on the same page?
Sure. So Zella Life is an on-demand coaching platform. And what we're doing is bridging the diversity gap and the leadership gap that exists between diverse talent and internal team leaders.
Awesome. And Julian, is there something that you would add to that?
Yeah, it's exciting work right now. I mean, you think about where we are. We've all experienced something brand new with the pandemic. There hasn't been something like this in 100 years. So to go in at this type of time and just take the temperature of where people are and help them to communicate better and be more effective at that, we're doing some great work right now.
Go ahead, Remy.
No, I was going to add, in addition to the pandemic, a big driver of our work and the need that companies have for us is because since George Floyd and all the various social justice issues that come out have happened, that we're seeing people walking on eggshells, and folks are afraid to say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, and you're also seeing heightened emotions around these topics. And so between those two things, it's creating a bigger disconnect in that leadership gap, in that talent development gap. And so we've identified some problem mechanisms that we're tackling with companies and seeing, as Julian said, phenomenal results in being able to do that.
That's great. We want to talk about that in a minute. I just want to point out, when you look at Gallup's State of the Global Workplace Report for 2022, one of the findings that they stressed was stress among the world's workers has reached an all-time high. So when COVID hit, people were really stressed out, and it's continued to go up. In fact, in 2009, 31% of workers felt stress every day. Today, it's 44%. So I think that points to the comment you just made, Remy, right? Mm-hmm. Like, what exactly is showing up for workers, and what do you see some of the reasons for the stress being today?
Yeah, what we're seeing is obviously the pandemic has shifted the way we do work and how we think about work, and going into remote or hybrid work environments. But now we're seeing companies wanting workers to come back, right? Didn't Twitter just send out a memo that everybody has to go back to work full time? But I think what happened was that people got a sense of work-life balance, and that you could work from home and be effective and still have, time with your family, or get more time back with your family. But there's also so much going on in the world outside of the workplace, right? We have politics happening. We have fear of illness and getting sick, right? Where we have people, what we call the sandwich generation, that are having to parent young children, but maybe also take care of, parents as well. And there's just a lot more and we have inflation and things like that, right? So all of those things create a hot water boiling situation, and you find emotions are running high and rampant.
Julian, how do you see people reacting to that?
It's a one word, uncertainty. See, when you throw that in the mix, it increases anxiety. When you throw that in the mix, it increases all of these things that we're seeing. Stress is tied to anxiety. And so when you don't know what's going to happen next, I mean, think about what happened. March 2020, we were told that we were gonna be shut down for 2 weeks, and then those 2 weeks turned into a couple of months, and then a couple of months turned into a year, and then people did, what did they do? They did what resilient people did. They found their bearing. They said, okay, I can figure this out at home. And then what happened? Then companies say, even though we're seeing success at home, we need you to come back, and now we need you to do this. And people were fed up, and that led to the great resignation, and people started to quit. They walked away. They said, I've had enough. And you saw nurses and people that were considered the workers who need,
Yeah.
they decided this was too much. We need over 300,000 teachers. It's too much. So you find people that, in my opinion, uncertainty caused the anxiety, the stress, and basically people are tired. They're fatigued.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. In fact, Remy, you made a great point a second ago about look what's happened with Twitter, right? Now Elon Musk has taken Twitter and said, no, everyone needs to come into the office. And, if you look at that Gallup survey, I don't know if Elon's looked at that, but 45% of the workforce says now is a really good time to find a job. And so, it's occurring to me, like in that situation, people may feel like they're being bossed around. They're being told, hey, working extra hours and going home and not seeing your kids to bed like you used to for the last at least 2 years, that's going to be your new norm. But people are resilient. And what they're doing that I see is they're reprioritizing their life.
Yes.
Saying, I want to have a career that I love. I want to have a business that I love and a family. And I think the point you guys are both making is that the old way of doing things had people going into the office. The old way of doing things had us commuting for 2 hours a day. The old way of doing things had us leaving right when our kids were getting up, maybe, and coming home when they're asleep already and not even seeing them, right? What kind of life is that for you? Well, it's one you get to choose. Like you can say, that's what I want, or that's what I don't want. But I think that's part of why we're seeing stress levels go up is people are struggling with, how do I actually maintain the relationship with my kids and my family and my relatives that I've actually been depending upon during the pandemic?
And most importantly, a relationship with yourself.
How about that?
Right? Because if you're stressed and if you go down, everything else around you goes down. And that's the reason why we're talking today about emotional intelligence, right? And how increasing your emotional intelligence can do that.
No question. I think there's a big question about IQ versus EQ, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can be book smart, and let me tell you, there's a lot of books you can read, and there's a lot of theory that you can read. But when you put it into practice, and you actually look at how people relate to each other and how you relate to you.
Right.
Sometimes what's in the books doesn't actually cover it.
Yeah, knowledge without compassion becomes ruthless. And so
Wow.
you can know everything, but if you don't have the ability to be curious, to say, okay, and I like to say, think about it like this: we're talking about the workplace, but when you think about a relationship and you come together for a cause, for whether it's love, or at work, whether it's for a job, we're here together to do something. And if we can remember that and keep that in the back of our mind, then it's about how can we work through and get to this together because we're on the same team. And oftentimes when anxiety is heightened and we're stressed, we forget that and we go into a fight or flight. And now it becomes a survival of the fittest. And I'll get you before you get me type of a situation. And you add in cancel culture. We've been seeing a lot of people in the media getting canceled lately People are scared to say or speak up about anything. You say the wrong thing accidentally, you post the wrong link, and your entire livelihood could be taken from you. So it's an interesting time that we're in nowadays.
No question. I think people have become very polarized. So one of the things we talked about in preparing for this show today is an article that was recently published in Inc. magazine. It's called "My Employee Gets Stressed Out and Snaps at Me. He's smart and capable, but this behavior is disruptive." Now, we're not going to read the article to everybody, but I think there are some definite things that came out of the article. And the three of us, we're all coaches, right? We work with businesses and business owners and executives, and we do the coaching. And I'm going to invite people to go look at what the article recommends. But, Julian, you had some interesting takes on the article. Would you like to maybe kick off the conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. I was excited to read what the article was going to be about. You take a look at the subject matter, and it's what we're dealing with today. People are on edge. But what I found interesting is the way the author decided to coach and what they were coaching on. And I think the leadership style, the old way, if you will, is to coach on the actual issue versus to coach the person holistically, to figure out, to understand that we're all showing up to work, dealing with trauma right now, dealing with experiences, but we all filter it differently. And to have curiosity as to why this person has anxiety. Did they show up like that in the beginning when they were hired? And if not, maybe there are things that are happening in their world that are causing them to show up a little bit more on edge. And how can we get to the bottom of working through those things so that we can actually do our job? And I think sometimes we believe people should just show up to work perfect, even though we don't do it in any other area in our life.
That's perfect. Remy, do you want to make any comments on that article?
Yeah, I think that it's also understanding that, we have different work styles, but and how we approach situations differently. And to be on topic with this, a lot of companies will look at the piece when interviewing if people have the right skills, the job skills, but there's this part about their emotional skills. And what tools do they have in their current emotional toolbox to deal with conflict, to deal with different types of leadership styles? And that's really important, for companies to look at. But I always like to say, as individuals who are going out and seeking a new job or a new work environment or a new career, that you have to take accountability for yourself. And you have to put new tools in your emotional toolbox to boost that EQ.
That's
cool. Right. And so I'll give you an example of this. I had a work experience where I worked for a woman that managed through fear and intimidation.
Yay.
Right. So you can imagine how that made everybody feel.
I love it.
So everybody's anxiety and stress went up as a result of this. And we always felt like we were constantly being beat down and we were never performing well enough. And we didn't make our numbers. And come to find out months later, when we didn't make our numbers, it was literally by dollars, like $20.
Oh my God.
2,000, not $2 million, right? $20. But we were the most terrible salespeople in the world. But as a result of working in this environment and being managed that way, I started having anxiety attacks that were affecting me very physically, and I was getting sick. And I realized that the feeling felt familiar, that I had experienced this before. And I realized it was how my dad used to parent. And I love my dad. I'm not dissing him, but he did manage a parent through fear and intimidation. So I realized that I needed to go do some work and get to the root of that, of my anxiety. And because I go around and quit, I couldn't go around and quit every single job because someone led that way. it was my responsibility to learn how to deal with difficult personalities, different types of leadership. And as a result of doing that work, I improved my emotional intelligence. I managed to not get off anxiety medication because the doctor did prescribe it for a while. But it was by doing that inner work that I was able to get off medication, manage people more effectively. And as a result, my leadership skills improved and I started getting promotions. But a lot of people will go around and quit jobs every single time they come up on a difficult person. You're going to have to deal with difficult people in your work life and in your personal life as well.
So I have a, first off, thank you for that. That's really great. I have a view that I just want to share because I think it's really key. And that is that we all get to own everything that there is that we do. Not only do we actually get to own it,
yes,
we actually get to own what happens to other people when we do it. So you guys, and we talked about this before, but I haven't heard the word yet. We all have triggers. We all get triggered. I mean, the first chapter of my book, Grand Theft Auto, is about the very first trigger I ever noticed I had and how it's impacted me my entire career. Remy, you told a great story when we were pre-show about how that's shown up in your personal life. And, you know, here's the thing. And Julian, you made great comments also about how somehow you get to notice when those things happen. But I actually personally did not notice it happening to me till I wrote that chapter in the book. Like I'm writing the chapter in the book. My whole life has passed, right? And I notice I'm actually getting triggered by my wife. And what am I supposed to do about that? And then I looked at it and I noticed I got triggered by former bosses. Why? Because I wasn't feeling empowered in the relationship. I was feeling like they were bossing me around, right? And I've learned in the last couple of years, when someone says something triggering and you notice physically something starts changing for you when they're talking, it's a good time to take a deep breath. It's a really good time to say, hey, you know what? I just got really triggered by what you said. Can we come back to this after I settle down and think this through? Now, that may go over great in some organizations, but I will tell you that in that Inc. article we referred to, I don't think it would go over well. How would you manage something like that, Julian? I see you shaking your head.
Well, first of all, I want to congratulate you because in writing the book, you're able to do something that that we coach people to do that most people they kind of push to the wayside, and that's actually sitting down and reflecting. And so that chapter in your book allowed you to reflect, and you were able to compare and contrast and realize that this is showing up in other areas of my life. And the only way that happens is through reflection. Reflection also is the only way that you can actually give yourself props by saying, I've done all these great things, therefore I'm confident that I can do great things in the future. So if you eliminate the reflection aspect, then you eliminate a lot of the wisdom that comes from the experiences that you're creating with yourself and others. So I want to congratulate you on that part of it. And when it comes to,
wait a minute, Julian, I want to thank you.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that.
That's tough. And then processing. So yes, you can in that situation a little more. We use this word all the time now, but it's a little more toxic. So in that situation, I don't think that person could do that and say, I am triggered right now. But the first step is to understand in your mind that you are, to be able to take a second in your mind. And what I shared before we got on here is that our feelings will move faster than our thoughts. So we'll feel, then the thought will happen in light speed, and all of a sudden we're already in reaction mode. And so if you can use that feeling that you mentioned, even in the article, if that person could say, oh, I'm feeling, if they understand they feel overwhelmed, the next step is to ask the question, am I, or why am I overwhelmed? Is it because of what's happening right now? Or is it because of something else? And just a few seconds that you take to do that gives you the point. What you're actually doing is processing. And that takes you out of a reactionary mode and it puts you in more of a reflecting mode, introspective mode. And that will help you to settle yourself. And so you may not be able to tell that person you're triggered, but you could journal it, take notes on it, and take it back with you home and start to dissect it. And that's going to help you to become better and more solid in these interactions at work.
I love it. And I just want to comment on that for a second, because there's two sides to the coin, right? There's the leadership side, and then there's the employee side, where if maybe they're not being viewed as a leader, but maybe they're being viewed as something less than. And as a leader, you may not notice this, but you actually have the opportunity to help them gain confidence, because there's something that every single employee has that they can lead in. Like, I remember early in my sales career, I figured out that if I just created an ROI spreadsheet, I could sell more software. And my sales grew by 25% year over year. And then management saw that and they said, hey, Jeff, show this to the company. So I showed it to everyone. I became the subject matter expert on ROI, right? Now, they didn't call me that, but I got a phone call from every sales rep that wanted to use the sheet and figure it out. It really helped me gain confidence, not only in the company, but that other people were looking up to me. And even if it's someone in accounts payable or receivable, there's something they do extraordinary that you could call them a leader in. And as a leader, if you create leaders and they have the mindset to create other people as leaders, you've basically changed the mindset of your organization to one where people can be empowered. And
Right.
that's where I think coaching makes a huge difference, because I think a lot of managers and bosses, they do what they've learned. They're in a rut doing what they do day to day. So I really want to, take my hat off to you, because Remy, I've been working with you now, I don't know, what is it, 4 or 5 years?
Yes.
And in that period, you have really taken coaching to the next level. Tell us a little bit about what you're seeing.
Yeah, with coaching, I think, especially in the workplace, I think the challenge that companies have when you tap employees, leaders to be coaches or mentors, of talent, right? And or direct reports or other people, maybe not even in your department, is that, like you said, you're coming with your own experiences, and that's awesome and beneficial. But what we're hearing and finding is that a lot of folks that are being put in those roles, number one, they're experiencing burnout from it, because it may be something that they're not getting paid for, right? And it's something extra that they're doing on top of their job. And for employees of color that are in leadership roles, because there's not that many, within the organization, then they're being tapped extra. And so it's a lot of pressure for folks in those roles, but also they're saying that they're not necessarily equipped to deal with some of the issues or challenges, personal challenges that the employees might be bringing to the table, right? So employees of color tend to have more imposter syndrome. There might be anxiety or other types of issues, mental health issues or disorders. ADHD is prevalent amongst salespeople, right? So they may not be equipped to help folks that get to either the root of the problem or what are some of the core issues in handling it. And the benefit of working with third-party organizations is that you have the coaches that are certified or specialize in certain things and can help folks, but also it creates a safe place to really, for employees to feel like they have someone that they can really talk to about what's really going on. And it's different because you have that still subconscious belief that Big Brother is listening or watching when you're working with someone within the organization.
Right.
And so what we're seeing is walls coming down, faster, and we're able to coach more effectively because there's a different level of trust that's established with someone outside of the organization. And it feels like what we're hearing is like, oh, you're my partner, right? And you can be with me all along my career journey. Whereas let's say an organization where someone gets promoted and moves to a different department, right? That leader that was coaching or mentoring them may not be available to them, or they leave the company.
Right.
So there's continuity with coaching, outside of the organization.
What are some of the benefits that you see people actually experiencing from the coaching that you guys are doing?
Julian, do you want to share?
Yeah, they're becoming more confident. Here's something that happens. So, Remy mentioned creating a safe space. And this is key because if you think about it, if I'm in an organization and maybe I'm dealing with imposter syndrome, maybe I'm dealing with all these other things, I would be very unwilling to talk about it within my organization because that might be tied back to my eval at the end of the quarter, the end of the year, or my one-on-ones. And if I have that tied back, then that could be impacting the amount of increase that I get per year. So why would I open up and be vulnerable if it would be weaponized against? So then what do? I buckle down. I don't communicate. And what organization, whether it's sports or business or any organization, have you seen that becomes a winning organization without communicating their wins and being able to view and break down their failures? None, zero. And so because there's no transparency there, you have people trying to sweep under the rug where they're weak, trying to be more boastful where they're strong, and we can never really move forward at the rate that we want. So what I see with coaching, it builds their confidence, it gives them a safe space, and it allows them on a week to week or day to day to check in. And because it's not in their organization, they don't feel uncomfortable with checking in a lot. See, because that's another thing. If I check in too much with my boss, maybe my boss will start to feel that I am incapable of doing my job. Therefore, I do not check in. So now you're building, and this is where I think more companies need to get smart with. When you build the person, you build the company. And if we can focus on that, you're going to get to the results and the KPIs and the OKRs that you want as an organization. But it starts with your people and making sure that they know they feel valued.
That's awesome, Julian. I want to thank you for that. I want to add something to that as well. So there's a new modern way that I've identified, and you guys are part of it, for organizations to create empowerment and build the teams they want in the future, right? And you mentioned a minute ago, Julian, vulnerability. It's interesting. I was interviewing Dwayne Canova on this show a couple of weeks ago, and Dwayne's a leadership expert and coach, and he doesn't like that word. And I said, but Dwayne, I love that word. I said, the best way to build trust with people is tell something about yourself. The new looking good is looking bad. He goes, yeah, but I like open and transparent communication. I said, great. Let's put those three words together. Because I think what's really missing in a lot of organizations is people are doing their best to cover themselves and protect themselves.
Yes.
And they're always looking for that. But until the CEO of the company actually stands up and says, like Mark Zuckerberg did with 11,000 employees that he's laying off. Hey, I'm responsible. I messed up. Now, listen, it's a big screw up, but at least he's owning up to it. With that at the lead, you have the opportunity now to be able to say, okay, great. In the executive ranks, when we do something that is negative, doesn't work, is impactful, causes a problem, we can take ownership of it. And when you create that throughout your organization, now you create an opportunity to build trust. And when you have trust, aligning the CEO's goals from the CEO all the way to the people working directly with customers is possible. Without trust, it's not possible. Everyone will do whatever they want to do to protect themselves. And you guys, we're at a half hour, and I know we could go on and on about this. So I'm going to invite you guys back to do this again in a few weeks, maybe, because this is fun. But I really want to just acknowledge, first off, I love you guys. You're amazing. Remy, my relationship with you over the last, 5 years or so has been nothing short of extraordinary. Julian, I am so excited to have started one with you and to have you part of this, because what you guys stand for and what I've written about and stand for in my practice is so aligned. And I think if I just put it in a nutshell, it occurs to me like what we're talking about is giving people power, letting them own their power, and not bossing them around or micromanaging them, but creating an environment where empowered people can all lead.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.
It was a pleasure. I look forward to the next one.
Yeah, really great. And hey, for everybody, I want to let you know that it's been a real honor doing these conversations about employee engagement. Leadership and discipline are at opposite ends of the spectrum. I invite you back to hear more of our thoughts and other experts in the area. For Remy, for Julian, for myself, thanks for joining us.